On June 22, 1941, Adolf Hitler issued the order to commence the largest invasion operation in human history up to that point. This operation, known as Operation Barbarossa, aimed to invade the Soviet Union, involving more than 3.5 million soldiers. Unfortunately, due to strategic miscalculations and underestimated Soviet resilience, Operation Barbarossa ultimately failed to achieve its objectives, leaving military experts puzzled. Had Operation Barbarossa succeeded, it would have significantly altered the course of World War II. Let's delve into the details of Operation Barbarossa. After Hitler's successful occupation of France in 1940, he recognized that it was only a matter of time before the United States of America would join the war against Germany, as had happened during the First World War. To prepare for this eventuality, Hitler needed crucial economic resources such as food and fuel. His gaze turned toward the Soviet Union, which possessed abundant resources. However, there was a significant obstacle. Before launching the invasion of Poland, Hitler had entered into a non-aggression pact with Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union. Despite this agreement, Hitler disregarded its value. His deep-seated hatred for communism and his desire to control the western part of the Soviet Union led him to seek a suitable plan for invading Russia. He instructed his generals to draw up his plan, emphasizing that the invasion must occur before the onset of winter to avoid the historical blunder that Napoleon Bonaparte had made when invading Russia. Napoleon's French army had suffered greatly in the harsh Russian winter. Yet, just before implementing Operation Barbarossa, Italian leader Benito Mussolini arrived in Germany. Mussolini sought Hitler's assistance after his failed attempt to invade Egypt, resulting in a humiliating defeat. Mussolini also requested help for the invasion of Greece. Hitler found himself compelled to aid Mussolini, leading to a 38-day postponement of Operation Barbarossa. Originally scheduled to begin on May 15th, the invasion finally commenced on June 22nd. Unfortunately, this delay would contribute to the operation's ultimate failure. Finally, after the completion of the invasion of Greece, Operation Barbarossa commenced. This operation was named after the Roman Emperor Frederick Barbarossa and involved more than 3.5 million soldiers from the German army and the Axis countries. The operation comprised 148 military divisions, which accounted for 80% of the entire German army. The vanguard of the German forces consisted of 17 armored divisions, known as panzer divisions, organized into 4 armored groups. These divisions were supported by approximately 3,400 tanks and 2,700 warplanes. Operation Barbarossa stands as the largest invasion in human history up to the present time. The German forces were strategically divided into 3 army groups, each with specific objectives. The Army Group of the North aimed to capture Leningrad to control the Baltic Sea region. The Army Group of the Center targeted Moscow, seeking to deliver a decisive blow to the heart of the Soviet government. The Army Group of the South aimed to secure Kiev, ensuring access to essential food supplies for the German state. Hitler anticipated that these military efforts would achieve their goals within 10 weeks, assuming the attack would be sudden and the forces involved would be substantial. However, the Soviet forces were not adequately prepared. Despite the massive buildup of German troops along the common border, Soviet intelligence played a crucial role. They were aware of the impending German attack. Surprisingly, when Stalin received this information, he remained unconvinced that an attack was imminent. Consequently, he did not put the Soviet forces on high alert, despite having 5 million soldiers and 23,000 tanks at his disposal. As the German invasion began, the Soviet army found itself unprepared. The initial stages of the invasion were advantageous for the Germans, with the panzer units advancing rapidly toward their objectives. Meanwhile, the Soviet forces retreated, facing confusion within their ranks during the intense German assault. The German Air Force provided significant support to the ground forces by bombing Soviet airfields, artillery positions, and troop concentration sites. At the outset of the operation, it was evident that the Germans held air superiority. On the very first day of combat, they destroyed 1,800 Soviet aircraft, with most of them eliminated while still on the ground before they could take off. Despite this initial success, the German forces encountered a critical challenge: a time gap between the movements of the panzer units leading the attack and the infantry. The delay in infantry forces catching up with the panzers proved problematic, leading to encircled pockets that needed to be dealt with. World War II saw the German army hailed as a military machine, often perceived as a fully mechanized force. However, this perception does not entirely align with reality. For instance, during the invasion of France, out of the 135 divisions employed by the German army, only 16 divisions were fully mechanized. The remaining divisions consisted of infantry on foot, horseback, or horse-drawn carts. A similar situation unfolded during Operation Barbarossa. Despite its massive scale, the German army still relied heavily on infantry and horses. Now, let's delve into the fatal mistake made by Hitler, one that ultimately contributed to the failure of Operation Barbarossa. Initially, Army Group Center made excellent progress, advancing closer to Moscow with each push. However, Hitler issued an order that halted the advance toward Moscow. Instead, he directed the forces from Army Group Center to join Army Group South, which aimed to control Ukraine. Hitler believed that Moscow was less critical, emphasizing the importance of securing Ukraine's resources, particularly wheat. Many German generals objected to this decision, advocating for the priority of capturing Moscow, the heart of the Soviet state. Despite their concerns, Hitler remained steadfast, asserting that the army and the people were in need. Unfortunately, this move disrupted Soviet calculations and ultimately led to the capture of 5 Soviet armies during the attack on Kiev. In the northern part of Russia, the Northern Army Group managed to reach the city of Leningrad. However, the number of troops was insufficient to capture the city. Consequently, Hitler ordered a brutal siege on Leningrad, which persisted until the city fell. In October, Hitler launched an operation to invade Moscow. Despite the belief that Soviet forces were exhausted and unable to continue fighting, the Soviets had fortified Moscow's defenses and summoned reinforcements from various regions. The German forces, consisting of 1 million soldiers and around 1,700 tanks, initially made noticeable progress during the attack. However, autumn rains transformed dirt roads into impassable rivers, halting their advance temporarily. In mid-November, as temperatures dropped and the Russian land froze, the German forces resumed their offensive. Yet, the pause allowed the Soviets to gather additional forces, including specialized Serbian troops accustomed to winter combat. These reinforcements led to heavy losses among the German ranks during their advance toward Moscow. Despite these setbacks, a German reconnaissance team managed to reach a distance of 7 miles from Moscow, the maximum achieved during the invasion. As winter intensified, the ill-prepared German forces faced extreme cold without appropriate clothing or machinery adapted for harsh conditions. Additionally, the Soviet counterattack further complicated matters. Ultimately, the Germans decided to halt Operation Barbarossa and retreat to preserve their existing gains. The failure of Operation Barbarossa can be attributed to a combination of Hitler's decisions and the challenging climatic conditions.